I'm living a nomadic life. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm
Mhm.
going to be. I am just totally like a feather floating in the wind, and they have to guide me and tell me where I'm going. What's the difference between faith and trust? And where does that all fit in? And I'm sitting there going, I don't know. I'm in that place where I'm like, I don't know if I have faith or I trust, but I know I'm supposed to be in this place.
Welcome everybody to Spirituality. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Kat. I'm a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. If you are returning, welcome and thank you so much. I am joined today by Brownell, who is an author and spiritual podcaster who also operates her own Facebook group centered around reincarnation stories. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, Brownell.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. So I usually ask people to start off just by telling us a little bit about yourself, your journey. How did you get into doing what you're doing today spiritually?
Yeah, what I do, as you mentioned, is I'm an author, so I've written a bunch of books, and almost all of them kind of fit within the metaphysical type of realm. I've also written screenplays, and so it kind of all kind of fits into that. I've written fiction and nonfiction. I've written children's books, so I kind of cover a lot of ground in terms of those kinds of stories. I got into spirituality probably like a lot of people, especially closer to my age, who got into Shirley MacLaine and Out on a Limb, and that was kind of that. And before that, Richard Bach, who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull and Illusions and some of those, phenomenal books. And so, especially Illusions, I think was one of the first that made me kind of open my eyes and look at the world a little bit differently. And, then it kind of evolves into reincarnation and how you've known people before. And I had what I call a dreamery, where I kept having the same dream over and over again that was obviously a past life memory. And then, I just kind of got into exploring. I love all the Michael Newton books, so I love the in between lives kind of discussion as well. And then I wrote my first book in 2006, that's called Five Reasons Why Bad Things Happen. So it's a nonfiction book. So when people say everything happens for a reason, I'm like, yep, I wrote the book on it. And just kind of let it kind of evolve from there. And then I thought, well, I'll write fiction. And I really love the idea of the way that fiction can open minds sometimes more than nonfiction. And it can get people to read something that they might not have read, but then all of a sudden their mind is going into a whole new realm.
Absolutely. I think that engaging the information or the imagination, like when you use your imagination to explore things that you think aren't real, it's actually an exercise in the flexibility of the ego personality, right? It can actually open our minds to possibilities and thought processes and realms that we may have been more closed off to before. So the imagination is a powerful tool for bridging the gap between the 3D world and the more metaphysical world. It helps us gain that flexibility of thought process. So
Yeah, exactly. Like the tagline for my novels is lose yourself in the fiction, find yourself in the truth.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me a little bit about your Facebook group and the community that you've built around people and their reincarnation experiences.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you in the group, and I love to see when you interact. And of course, people listening, if you're invited to join the group. It's called Life is a Trip: Reincarnation and Afterlife Stories, and it covers a lot of ground. So it doesn't necessarily have to be reincarnation, but anything kind of in the metaphysical world. And again, what I wanted to do is I wanted to set up a place for stories, for people to share stories, read stories, and whether they're fictional or factual, because I do think that sometimes when you sit there and say, okay, you have to prove this story, like there's some groups who are like, no, you can't tell this kind of story, it has to be solidly proven, and I totally respect that, right? That's their
Mhm.
world. I wanted something more open, and so that, if somebody came in and said, well, I'm Marilyn Monroe, and then somebody else said, I'm Marilyn Monroe, and everybody was Marilyn Monroe, who cares? Right?
Yeah.
Nobody has to prove that they were Marilyn Monroe. If they have a story and it's an interesting story, then it's coming to them for a reason, and they can share it and we can discuss it for a reason. And they're probably all different stories.
Yeah.
So I really encourage people, if they think they have an idea, just start writing and come up with, and I'm sure we're going to talk about the short story that I wrote this year. And that one was like, I'm writing it thinking it's fiction. All of a sudden it becomes real.
Yeah. You know what I think is interesting about that too? It's funny that you bring that up because, just because multiple people have experiences with being Marilyn Monroe doesn't necessarily mean that all of them are wrong or invalid. Like the way energy flows and works, I mean, all consciousness is connected to each other and to itself. So it's perfectly valid that somebody may be identifying with that story, identifying with her journey. She has a very powerful divine feminine journey that helps us explore some of the feminine wounding in the world. Like, so I think that she's a powerful icon for that. And so if we're going through something that is similar energetically, I think it's perfectly possible to be channeling and connecting to that story and experiencing parts of her experience. That soul construct exists in perpetuity. So people may very well be experiencing parts of her journey and her story, through those energetic connections to help themselves learn and grow. So I don't think there's any need to try and disprove that everyone was Marilyn Monroe. Maybe there's a part of all women in the current modern experience that are Marilyn Monroe. You know what I mean?
Right. It's kind of the collect. I love the way you said that. And yeah, it's kind of like the collective conscious. And what is the message there? What are we supposed to learn there? One thing that's really important to me throughout all of my writing and all of my kind of whether it's fiction, nonfiction, or anything, is to get to the why. Right? There's a why that they're having that memory, and the why is the lesson in it. So that and so when you start looking at, okay, all these things that could be happening is happening for a reason. What's that reason? And you can get to that. And that can be true whether it's past life memories or it can be healing, and those kinds of things. But getting to the why can get you through it. So I love that. I love the way you said that, because I do think we're shifting consciousness from this patriarchal, energy into a more divine feminine kind of energy. And somebody like her or Princess Diana or, some of these icons, their struggles as well as their celebrations, if you will, are important, like you said, icons for us to learn from.
Yeah, there's definitely a healing journey and a wound recognition there that can be beneficial for people to channel and learn from and experience parts of that. So I think that's a completely valid thing that many people may be retrieving parts of that experience from that soul experience within consciousness, greater consciousness, in order to learn and grow and feel valid and heal within ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that's a completely possible and valid thing.
Yeah,
Talk.
well, thanks. Yeah, I do too. And to have a group where people aren't going to judge, and people are just going to be accepting of that. And when you say, well, it can be fictional or factual, it doesn't matter. Then it means that you can't have somebody else judging that, because that's not what we're here to do, is prove anything. We're here to experience and learn and grow and look into those kinds of things you're talking about. So absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and I certainly think that the modern definition of what is fact is a limiting belief structure in and of itself. People think dreams aren't real, for example. Dreams aren't facts, that's just a dream. But I mean, we know dreams are facts, we all experience them. So if everybody is doing something and having an experience, it's probably valid and important, that experience. Like, I don't think we dream for no reason. You know what I mean? Same thing with imagination. To say that imagination isn't real is cutting out a huge facet of experience. Like, all of us engage in our imaginations, and how we see ourselves is so important to how we interact in life. Like, so how you're imagining self matters a lot in what you're projecting out into the world. And so we've kind of gotten into a sphere of thought process where some things are facts and those are the facts, and but that thought process cuts out so much of our experience that's actually very important. So becoming more flexible about how we perceive that, I think, is to everybody's benefit.
I agree. And I don't know if you've read the Liz Gilbert book called Big Magic.
Mm-mm.
Well, she talks about like imagination and thoughts and ideas as being like almost their own entities, and that they're
Mhm.
floating around looking for the right person to land on. And that if this is the person to bring this idea to life, it'll land on that person. And if that person sits on it too long, it might float off and land on somebody else if it's if it's kind of a message that's supposed to be delivered. And I love that. I also, one of my favorite quotes from Bob Dylan is, he says, the song was there before I came around. I just got the pen and wrote it down. So
Yeah.
these thoughts are their own kind of energies and entities that and of course then the next question is, well, then who created those thoughts and entities, and why are they created? And then you can go down all kinds of fun rabbit holes when you look into that.
Yeah, I mean, and I think personally, and again, like people can disagree or whatever, but in my experience, it's the expansion of consciousness or the expansion of all that is has been going on. It's an eternal thing, right? And you can think of self as like a nerve ending or like, that's working with the collective to create that total experience, right? And so to some degree, whoever, wherever the idea or thoughts or things were created, they're still accessible and a part of the collective experience. And so I think you can kind of get into where law of attraction kicks in. So if somebody has a strong desire to write that song or a strong desire to express something that they're feeling inside, and it can, those thoughts and things can be retrieved and attracted to you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then again, it kind of weaves into, your purpose, what are your communication to, what I call the upstairs, and where your channels are being opened to do that, is also a big interesting part of it. This has been such a phenomenal year for me because I did start writing a story, and I'm writing it and I'm writing it from the point of view of the upstairs. So there's a team, up there who's looking at the people on Earth, these two people, this couple. And as I'm writing it, I'm like, all of a sudden I realize they're telling me who they are. This is not fiction.
Hmm.
This is, these are real entities that are really working on this. And so, it's semi-autobiographical, and it's like I'm writing it, and it's becoming real. And then the more I write, the more real it becomes. And then the more I'm like, well, what do y'all want to do? And there's just so much to tap into. And so then, of course, the next part of the question is, okay, what's the purpose of that story, and what message is it delivering, and how does it mean something to people? Is it meant to have a life outside of just my imagination or my computer?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just had the thought the other day that like integration is one of the places where people like why or what is this for, what is the purpose. What the question I get a lot is, what does this mean? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And it's an interesting kind of thing. Like you can get a download, you can be channeling information, you can be creating, and but we as physically focused humans are so like into the doing of things. It's really, I mean, that's what we came here for, is to do things. And so we think it's fun to have that drive. And but we kind of tend to get ourselves caught up in the why, or what's the purpose, or what does this mean, and we end up imagining too many different scenarios rather than just letting things flow. So the meaning is whatever it turns out to be, right? For anybody who's channeling that information. And it will come through and make sense eventually, right? But getting ourselves all confused in our head and thinking of all the different possibilities and stuff is one of the things that I think kind of puts a damper on the energy or slows things down for people in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I agree, and I also see it, kind of another way to look at it too is I was in a conversation with somebody today, and they were like, you need to manifest, you need to set up your intentions, you need to know where you're going to go, you set up your goals, you get in, and I'm like, that's not my experience right now. My experience
Mm-hmm.
right now is to completely, because we really haven't talked about this, but I mean, I'm living a nomadic life. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to be. I am just totally like a feather floating in the wind, and they have to guide me and tell me where I'm going. I don't have a
Mm-hmm.
home. I'm living in a hotel. This is a hotel, and I'm going from place to place. I mean, this year I've lived in Italy, Tunisia, Aspen, Colorado, Atlanta. Now I'm going back to Tunisia. I've been, all these different places, and I still don't know where I'm going.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I am just really like, what do y'all want? Guide me there. And so this person was like, no, 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 you have to know. And I'm like, no, you're missing the point of what my purpose is and what I'm supposed to learn right now. A lot of people, their purpose might be, or what they need to learn right now is manifesting, setting goals, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is, no matter what goal I set, if they want to do something else, they're going to make something else happen. If they want me to go in another direction, because I was going to go to Italy for a year, and I was all planned, I had the apartment and everything, and then oops, they're not even taking applications for visas. So I had to come up with a plan B. And I was like, well, what's plan B? I could go for 3 months to Italy, but I had to go somewhere else for 3 months. I picked Tunisia, which is not your average everyday, American, top of your mind thing. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's where I met this man, and that's what stimulated this story. So, so it's
Yeah.
like, they wanted this to happen, and they made those obstacles, so that they could kind of, I feel like it's like one of those like rats in the maze or whatever, but then they put up a wall, so I have to go down a different corridor to get to the, and right now, like I don't know where I'm going to live. I don't know any of that.
Yeah.
It's kind of a
It's
trip.
interesting because I think they're kind of like representative of different stages in the process, right? So like
Yes.
imagining what you want and all of that that's part of it. Like we spend most of our lives leading up to doing that, right? I want even when we're children, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a firefighter. We spend a lot of time in our life choosing and deciding and creating those passions and those drives. But then to your point, at some point you do have to relax and let the universe help things unfold, right? Like and trust the process and follow the intuitions and the flows to the things that you want. Like the manifestation is in following the flow and just letting things happen. So I think you may be right. Like I like the way that you were talking about that because it's almost like some people and maybe we were kind of talking about the same thing in the integration phase because it's almost like people get too caught up in the what do I do, what do I do, how do I make this a goal or a purpose, and they forget the part where it's like you've already created the things that you want in your imagination and the flow of things. Now you have to relax and let them come in and trust the process a little bit. Otherwise you're kind of blocking yourself or putting a hamper on the energy.
Maybe what you thought you wanted, you go down this path, and I kind of look at these guides, or like I said, the upstairs or whatever, kind of like border collies. We're going down this way, and if they don't want us to go that way, they're going to keep knocking our side to get it to, get us to go another way. And so, how do you know how to get in that flow? And I mean, I've been around a long time, and I've never been in this kind of like, I don't know where I'm living. I don't have a place to live. I don't have any idea what's really next. I was pretty clearly guided that I wanted to get my novels launched, which I did a few weeks ago, and so now they're out in the world. And the story that I wrote that I mentioned, the story is called "The End: A Love Story to the Universe." So, and it's free to anybody listening. So, just in case anybody's like, "What's that?" And get my novels out. And now that those are kind of launched, then it's like, okay, I know I have to do maintenance because I have a podcast that I launched that ties into my Facebook group. I've got things to do, but I can do them from anywhere. And I mean, it's somebody was in a conversation, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it. Like, what's the difference between faith and trust? And where does that all fit in? And I'm sitting there going, I don't know. I'm in that place where I'm like, I don't know if I have faith or I trust, but I know I'm supposed to be in this place. And friends are like, no, you have to decide where you want to live, and then you'll make the plan, and then I'm like, no, I'm in a whole, I don't think it's hierarchy, like, okay, like you said, like levels of, like okay, when you learn to manifest, then the next thing is you get to this detachment place. It's like this is a pedestal or a platform, and this is a platform, and I'm just on a completely different platform. And it's scary. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's really scary. And there's some days, like especially the last few days, I kind of thought I was going to go this way. Now I find out I'm not. Um,
Yeah.
you know,
And I think that
yeah.
but I do like, I really appreciate you sharing that out because it does feel scary. I think one of the things that really affects the world greatly right now is a lack mentality or a fear, like root chakra stuff. Like, I don't feel secure. I don't feel safe. I don't know where, the money is going to come from. Like that feeling of a lack of security, right, is I think a huge energy that's out there in the world. And I think it's beautiful to be going through the process of learning that there's not a lack, and it is okay to trust your intuition and trust the flow. Like things will pull in and come in their timing, and you never know. You never know what plan is in store or what pathways there are. A lot of times the core of a desire that you have will manifest in ways that you never imagined that it would. Like you wouldn't have seen that path unfolding, right?
Oh, I mean,
So
trust me, because I'm saying they're like, I call them traffic angels, some sort of entity of like, this person's here, how do they get them together? And it's all the
mhm.
logistics of that. And, I mean, how do you get an American woman to meet a British man in Tunisia? You know? And and then what happened as a result of that experience, profoundly changed my life. I still don't know the trajectory, right?
Yeah.
It's called the end for a reason, but it's but it also was like I would have I thought I'm going to Tunisia for 3 months and that's going to be it, and I'm just going to write and finish my writing, and I found this really beautiful place that's super like crazy affordable, and I mean I never imagined any of that was going to
Yeah.
happen.
Well, and it's kind of funny because if you translate it into like people are completely comfortable trusting their GPS, right? They don't know. Like it's just a thing on their phone, but it's coming from satellites, which are on a higher, they're looking down from above and can see everything that you can't see. And so
I
your
love that.
GPS, right, your GPS is just going to follow the highlighted route. You know what I mean? Like if you get off route, they're going to be like, please make your first legal U-turn. You know what I mean? So it's
That's a great analogy.
traffic blocked ahead, take exit here to get around. Like they will talk you through your blocks, they will talk you through if you get off on the wrong exit, they're just going to reroute you to the same destination, right? And it's funny because people trust that voice coming out of their phone or their GPS nav, right?
Yeah.
And just follow what it says. I mean, you don't really know, but you're just following it, and it's because we know that the satellite, like the information is coming from a satellite link and a world map that knows the broader picture of what's going on and how to get you where you're going.
Yeah.
And trusting trusting your inner self and your guides, your higher self perspective is similar to trusting your nav system or your GPS on where you're going. So
Yeah, the only difference is I don't set a destination, and it's going to set the destination, and I just kind of sit there and keep hoping, okay, can you make the destination fun and pleasurable and, make the lessons easy or, joyful instead of traumatic or difficult. And of course, life isn't going to be all easy. Sadly, we learn more from sometimes our mistakes and the quote unquote bad things. But yeah, that's a really good analogy. I like that analogy.
yeah, and I think sometimes we don't remember what the destination was, right? Because we come here and we have our blinders on and we're in the experience, but and sometimes the destination we chose, like maybe we chose it before we got here and we were kind of hoping to have this kind of an expansion experience or this kind of growth in life or this kind of thing happening. And so I think maybe we don't remember plugging in the coordinates once we get here. We're sort of here to be fully immersed in the experience. Um, so I do think you're right. There's a piece of it that's like being able to trust inner self or the higher guidance. You know what I mean? Even if you don't remember yourself plugging in the coordinates, you don't remember what the destination was or what we were doing here. Um, but being able to accept that the expansion and the growth is well worth it. Like we picked our route for a reason.
Yeah, and,
And
and that's a really good point. And then you might get here and you might have parents or friends or society or something saying, no, 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 this is what you ought to do. And so you think you're following something that was not maybe not part of the plan you originally signed up to learn, right? And so, I have had lots and lots of failures in my life. I mean, I've experienced failures so much that I've actually been a keynote speaker at two different failure conferences. Like, so
yeah.
I'm like, okay, that's my dubious honor as I can be a success at failure, right? But what is that failure? It's a lot of it is I thought I was getting guidance of what to do. I followed the guidance of what I thought I was supposed to do, and it didn't work out. And I went through all the trauma, that goes along with that, right?
Hmm.
And so then you look and go, well, was I just supposed to learn that trauma and not achieve that goal? Right?
Hmm.
And sometimes the answer of that is yes, and sometimes it's you're not listening to the border collies and they're knocking you here, and you're like, I'm hell bent to go here, and then you go somewhere when maybe you should have gone here. So it's
Yeah. I
a
mean,
paradox.
I think if we like embrace or like inhabit like our inner child with that, like you know how children make a lot of mistakes. They make a million mistakes a day. They're still learning how to do literally everything. They try to eat and miss their face. They learning to walk and fall down over and over again, But I don't think what children don't have is the same inner judgment of themselves. Like if a child misses their face with the peas, they're like, okay, and they try eating peas again, or they, they don't stop trying to learn how to eat their food. They don't stop trying to get back up and walk again, and they're not judging. I mean, they're not judging themselves over it. And to some degree, I think it's, socialization wise, we are not necessarily judging them.
It depends on who their parents are. I mean, like I've been doing a lot of studying on attachment styles and dismissive avoidant and all those kinds of things. And, there are so many people that are adults that were so judged and so dismissed as children, and one of my favorite memes says, well, children are resilient. And they're like, yeah, if children are so resilient, why do adults need therapy? So I agree innately the kids don't care. Like they'll get up if they fall. Let's just hope they have parents, that are
Well,
supportive and say, "Come on, you can do it."
that judgment is a socialization. We learn that from the
Right.
exterior world. We learn that from parents and teachers and everyone around us. Like innately, when we come into this world as little souls, we're just exploring and don't necessarily have that self-judgment within us.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
learned
Yeah.
behavior from the responses of people around us.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
unlearning it is daunting for a lot of people. I mean, a lot of us don't even have those memories from childhood. It's kind of a deep dive to go in and recognize that about
It's
oneself.
really, like I said, it's just something I've been studying a lot, and looking at people and relationships and adults and going, okay, when you see some of these that are still holding these wounds, as adults, when, like you said, we should be able to be creative and free and not try to fit in somebody's box that tells us what to do and how to behave. And, maybe some kid's going to come up with a new way of eating peas that's like the coolest way of eating peas. And let them try that, let them do that because maybe that'll open up the world in a whole new way. It's very interesting to see the whole perspective of what failure is. And, in a way, what I'm doing now is like, I guess there's not a definition of failure because I haven't set up a plan, there's certainly been some hard knocks and hard lessons this year. I'm not going to lie for that. But then there's also been some incredible joys, and incredible experiences.
Yeah, there's certainly something to be said for letting the journey unfold and appreciating the places that it's taking you that you would never have thought you would have ended up, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, totally. And I don't know what's next. Some days I'm like, whatever, and some days I feel like they are so in tune with me and they tell me what they want and they give me the right energy and they help me focus in the right direction. And some days, like the last 2 days, just in my life is, okay, where are you all and what do you want? Because this isn't easy, and I want easier because how do I know what you want unless you guide me? And sometimes I get the message back and they're like, we're doing our best, but we're dealing with humans and humans aren't going to always listen to us. And so, if we want this thing to happen for you with this person or whatever, and that person's not listening, then, they can only do so much.
Free will is they can't actually control you.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. Even with me, and I'm trying to let them control me. They can't
yeah,
control me, right? I'm trying to go, well, where do you want me? And like, well, if I don't hear anything, then I have to make a decision. Just for anybody who's looking at maybe having the lifestyle I have right now, it's not as easy as it looks. But it's interesting.
yeah, absolutely. And it's fun. I mean, I think it's doable in manifestation terms as well. So if what you want to do is go to Tunisia, it's all right. I know I'm going to Tunisia. Show me the way. Maybe it's a flight, maybe it's a bus, maybe it's a boat, maybe there's somebody else who's caravanning. You know what I mean? It's interesting because sometimes how do I say this well? There's more than one way to do a thing. Like I really here this is a personal example, but when I was first starting to work with manifestation as a concept, it was like I really wanted a new living room set. I have three kids, a brother, a husband, two dogs, and two cats. So my furniture was beat, right? Like I was like, oh, it's been years and this is really gross. Like I'd really like a new living room setup, something nice for my environment, something that matches my vibe. But there was like no way I could afford anything like that because I had been quit my job and just decided I work for the universe about 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago now. So there's no income. So I don't really have the money for it. But I had been thinking about it and kind of playing with it in my mind and what kind of aesthetic I would like. And then over about the next 3 months or so, just taking my regular walk around the block, all of the pieces of a brand new living room set were all just out on the side of the road. Other
Wow.
people had replaced their furniture or didn't want it. And it was like all the other people in the area who had the pieces that I needed just put them out on the side of the road for free. And it was kind of an interesting thing of like there's more than one way to manifest or get to the things that you want. And that's a very item based example, but
No, it's a beautiful example, though. I think that's a really, that's a really beautiful example. And yeah, I mean, I know for me, I've been, independent and career driven and, success driven and
mhm,
all these things. And, I didn't start out the year thinking I wanted to find love. I just didn't. I remember talking to my therapist about it a few years ago, and he's like, "Don't you want to have a relationship? Don't you want to have that?" And I was like, "I don't want it." And this year, I never thought that would happen, and then I did. And now I want it again, and I don't know if it's going to happen again.
it's interesting is you can kind of look at it as an unfolding sort of adventure. Like it's kind of funner sometimes when you don't know how things are going to work out. Or you can live in sort of a like I'm afraid because I don't know how things are going to work out. And so I think there's just different ways of looking at it. If you were on a roller coaster that was like slowly climbing up that incline and you're like, oh my God, and the tension starts to build and you don't really know what's going to happen when it hits the top and goes over, you know what I mean? It's going to be a whole experience. So that can either be like fear or it can be excitement. Do you know what I mean? Like you can be
Totally.
yeah, and
Well, I've been on
it's all
all,
about
I've had that's really the kind of the key, and I love the way you said that. It's kind of like I have been this year much more of the range of emotions than I've ever been, right? Because I've
mhm.
been in so much uncertainty and so much, yes, it's, so much kind of crossing the line between fear um, and, and excitement. A lot of those experiences this year, right?
Mhm.
And yet it's also one of the things I love to tell people about traveling is, if we live in the same place and we start getting into this world like, well, I need this kind of mattress in order to sleep well, or I need this kind of pillow, or I need this kind of environment. And you travel, you get the mattress you get the pillow you get. Like that's, you just have to go with it. And so all of a sudden, all the things that you thought were structural things that you thought you needed, they're not there anymore. And there's other things that you're dealing with. So yeah, it's pretty wild. I don't know why we got all down this road, but it did give me time to write and got me an opportunity to finish my novels. And there's been some phenomenal response to that. So I do treasure and appreciate the fact that I got to do that. And it led me to write that story, which I've had like 3 people tell me it could be a college course, and it's just a little 9,000 word story. So you
No, it's
never
very
know.
cool. Do you want to let people know real fast where they can find you and where they can find your stories?
Yeah, my name is Brownell Landrum, and I'm the only Brownell Landrum in the world, so it's easy to find me. I've got a website, brownelllandrum.com, and of course, as you know, the Life is a Trip Reincarnation Stories podcast, as well as the Facebook group. So join the Facebook group, and you'll find me there, since it's kind of my group, and I started it. It's over 11,000 people, so it's pretty exciting. And I don't know if you can put in the show notes, but I can give a link to download my story for free, as well
Yeah.
as my first novel. Just to give kind of a headline of the novel trilogy, it's kind of like a Dan Brown Da Vinci Code meets like an Outlander. So it's a love story woven into a mystery that's metaphysical, and it's kind of this big epic reincarnation mystery about a famous couple from history who are reunited today to fulfill a prophecy that will change the world. So yeah, I love. And the first book in the series is 99 cents for a while, so yeah, it's pretty easy to access for it. So
Awesome.
I love
Yeah,
people.
we can include all of those links in the description for anybody who wants to click on them. So they're easy to find and follow for
Yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
And definitely check out the Facebook group. I've been on there. I've been interacting and making some posts. It's a fun group of people. So if you're looking for somewhere to just connect and chat about your experiences, it's open-minded so that, a no judgment sort of situation to share your reincarnation or your other side stories with people.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and they're always, I tell people, you don't have to believe in reincarnation to enjoy a reincarnation story. It's kind of my goal to get more of these stories out there, because I think they really can change the world. It can open up people's minds, and they can start realizing, we've all probably been different races, we've been at different nationalities, we've been different religions before, and so it's hard to live in a world and call with racism if you've been that race, or you've been a different socioeconomic level, or you've been a different kind of health issues or whatever. We might be kind of programmed in this world to think, well, that's bad and this is good. And you're like, Yeah, but you probably had those experiences, or you will at some point. And that's kind of one of my dreams and missions.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for joining us, for sharing so much of your story. I think that it's interesting to get the perspective of um, being able to go with the flow and that kind of how that journey it can feel a little bit frightening, but I think it's a powerful message to share with people. Some trust and some flow and some allowing is a beautiful message to be sharing. Definitely go check out Brownell at her website, check out some of her stories, come check out the Facebook group. You can find me on there as well. And thank you so much for being here, for listening to us. Like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff, and we will catch you next time on Spirituality.